My daughter-in-law thought I didn't speak Chinese. Then I heard her secret plan to destroy me. Mei Lin had never planned to learn Chinese. It wasn't a childhood dream, nor a long-held ambition tucked away in a quiet corner of her life. It began, as many things did at her age, with time, too much of it, and a sense that something inside her was slowly dulling. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. At 62, Mei Lin found herself in an unfamiliar position. For most of her life, she had been needed. She had been a mother, a wife, a school administrator, a woman whose days were divided neatly into obligations and responsibilities. There was always something to prepare for, someone to check on, something that required her attention. Then her husband passed away. Not suddenly, not dramatically. Cancer had taken its time, stretching grief into something slow and exhausting. By the time he was gone, Mei Lin felt as though she had already mourned him 1,000 times over. What followed was not sharp pain, but a hollow quiet she didn't know how to fill. Her son Wei insisted she come live with him and his wife, just for a while. "Until you're back on your feet," he said gently, though Mei Lin wasn't sure what that meant. Her feet were fine. It was the rest of her that felt unsteady. Wei lived in a modern townhouse on the edge of the city, the kind of place that looked impressive but slightly impersonal. Neutral walls, clean lines, furniture chosen for appearance rather than comfort. His wife, Yoon, had decorated most of it. Mei Lin could tell. Nothing here felt accidental. At first, Yoon had been gracious. She greeted Mei Lin with polite smiles, helped her unpack, showed her where everything was kept. She spoke carefully, always respectful, but there was a stiffness to her movements, as if she were performing kindness rather than feeling it. Mei Lin noticed, but she didn't comment. She had raised a child. She knew the difference between surface warmth and genuine affection. She told herself not to read too much into it. After all, she was a guest. The first few weeks passed quietly. Mei Lin adjusted her routine to avoid being in the way. She woke early, made her own tea, kept her belongings neatly contained in the guest room. She cleaned up after herself meticulously, aware that even small inconveniences could breed resentment. Wei left early for work each morning and returned late. Yoon worked from home, her laptop nearly always open, her phone rarely far from her hand. She spoke often on calls Mei Lin didn't understand, sometimes in Mandarin, sometimes in English, switching effortlessly between the two. Mei Lin only understood English. Or rather, she used to. One afternoon, about a month after she moved in, Mei Lin found herself sitting alone in the living room, scrolling aimlessly through her tablet. A video autoplayed, some travel documentary filmed in rural China. The narration was soft, the scenery slow and expansive. Rivers winding through misty mountains, old men playing board games in village squares, market vendors calling out prices in a musical rhythm. Something about the language caught her attention. She couldn't understand it, but she liked how it sounded. The tones rose and fell with purpose, as if the words themselves carried emotion beyond their meaning. It felt alive in a way English no longer did to her. Without thinking too much about it, Mei Lin searched for a language app. She told herself it was just something to do. A way to keep her mind active. Her doctor had mentioned mental stimulation during her last visit, and had warned her gently about isolation and cognitive decline. Learn something new, he had said. Anything. So she chose Chinese. At first, it was difficult. Embarrassingly so. The characters looked like abstract art, the tones confusing and unforgiving. Mei Lin stumbled constantly, mispronouncing words, forgetting meanings she had learned the day before. But she was stubborn. She practiced every morning after Wei left for work, headphones on, voice lowered so Yoon wouldn't hear. She repeated phrases under her breath, scribbled characters into a notebook she kept hidden in her nightstand drawer. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. Slowly, something shifted. The sounds began to make sense. The patterns emerged. Mei Lin started recognizing words Yoon used during her phone calls. Simple ones at first. Greetings. Numbers. Common expressions. She felt a small, private satisfaction every time she understood a phrase. She didn't tell anyone. Not because she was hiding something, but because it felt like hers. A small island of control in a life that had otherwise been rearranged without her consent. As time passed, the atmosphere in the house subtly changed. Yun's politeness remained, but it grew thinner, more strained. Her smiles came slower, faded quicker. She began correcting Mei Lin over small things. The way she loaded the dishwasher, how long she left the lights on, which groceries she bought. Nothing overt. Nothing Wei would notice. But Mei Lin noticed. She noticed how Yun sighed when she entered the room. How conversations stopped when she approached. How Yun's voice sharpened slightly whenever Wei mentioned his mother. Mei Lin told herself it was stressful. Yun worked long hours. Marriage was complicated. Living with in-laws was never easy. She reminded herself of her place. Still, unease settled into her chest like a quiet ache. One evening, while preparing dinner together, a rare shared activity, Mei Lin reached for a spice jar. "That's not the right one," Yun said quickly. Mei Lin paused. "I thought this is what you used last time." Yun took the jar from her hand and set it aside. "I've adjusted the recipe." The word adjusted lingered between them, heavier than necessary. Mei Lin nodded and stepped back. "Of course." Yun didn't look at her. That night, Mei Lin lay awake longer than usual. She stared at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the house settling around her. She wondered when she had started feeling like an inconvenience rather than a mother. The next morning, she practiced Chinese a little longer than usual. Her progress surprised her. She could now follow slow conversations. She could understand context even when she missed specific words. She wasn't fluent, but she was far from ignorant. She smiled to herself, a small, secret smile. A few days later, everything changed. It was a rainy afternoon. The kind that dampened sound and blurred time. Mei Lin had finished folding laundry and was heading back to her room when she heard Yun's voice drifting from the home office. The door was slightly open. Yun was on the phone, speaking in Mandarin. Normally, Mei Lin would have passed by without thought. Yun often spoke Chinese with friends or family. It was none of Mei Lin's business. But this time, something made her pause. It wasn't curiosity. It was tone. Yun's voice was low, tight, stripped of its usual professional polish. There was frustration there. Anger. Mei Lin stood still, her hand resting lightly against the wall. At first, she only caught fragments. So tired of pretending. She doesn't even realize. Mei Lin frowned, her heart beating a little faster. She told herself she was imagining things. That this wasn't about her. That she should move on. Then Yun said a name. Her name. Mei Lin's breath caught. She listened, her body suddenly rigid, as Yun continued speaking. Freely, carelessly, convinced she was unheard and, more importantly, misunderstood. Words Mei Lin had practiced for months now flowed together in meaning. "She thinks she's so innocent," Yun said. "Always watching. Always judging." Mei Lin's mind raced. Judging. Watching. She barely spoke unless spoken to. Yun paced, her footsteps audible. "I've been patient. Too patient. But she's not as helpless as she pretends." Mei Lin's chest tightened. "What scares me," Yun continued, her voice dropping further, "is that she doesn't know what's coming. She thinks she still has control." There was a pause. Then a soft, humorless laugh. "I won't confront her. Not yet. I'm waiting. She'll regret ever stepping into my life." Mei Lin stepped back before she could be seen. Her hands trembled as she returned to her room, closing the door silently behind her. Her mind replayed the words again and again. Regret. Waiting. Control. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't stress or cultural difference or mild resentment. This was my intention. Mei Lin sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her closed notebook on the nightstand. The one filled with characters and practice sentences. The one Yun had no idea existed. For the first time since she began learning the language, Mei Lin felt afraid of what understanding it had revealed. She had thought knowledge would empower her. She hadn't considered what it would cost. And as the rain continued tapping against the window, Mei Lin realized that whatever Yun was planning had already begun. And silence, this time, might not protect her. Mei Lin did not sleep that night. She lay on her back, eyes fixed on the ceiling fan as it turned in slow, steady circles, each rotation marking another minute of wakefulness. Yun's voice replayed in her mind with cruel clarity. Not the words themselves, but the certainty behind them. The calm confidence of someone who believed she was unseen, unheard, and therefore untouchable. Mei Lin had lived long enough to know the difference between frustration spoken in anger and something far more dangerous. Yun hadn't been venting. She had been planning. By morning, Mei Lin's body felt heavy, as though the weight of the house itself had pressed into her overnight. Still, habit carried her forward. She rose early, made tea, and sat at the kitchen table as dawn filtered through the blinds. Yun entered the kitchen an hour later, already dressed for the day, phone in hand. "Good morning," Yun said, her tone pleasant. "Good morning," Mei Lin replied. Their eyes met briefly. Yun smiled. Mei Lin returned it. Nothing about the exchange would have seemed unusual to an observer. And that, Mei Lin realized, was the most unsettling part. She watched Yun move around the kitchen, efficient, controlled, every motion deliberate. This was the same woman who had spoken of revenge with such ease the day before. The contrast made Mei Lin's stomach tighten. Wei came down shortly after, rushed as usual, grabbing toast on his way out the door. "I'll be late tonight," he said, kissing Yun's cheek. "Client dinner." Yun nodded. "Drive safe." When the door closed behind him, the house fell into silence again. Mei Lin retreated to her room, but she didn't open her language app. She couldn't bring herself to practice. Every word now felt heavier, loaded with consequences she hadn't anticipated. Instead, she sat by the window and tried to think. What had she done to deserve this? She went over every interaction since moving in. Every comment she'd made, every suggestion she'd offered. She had been careful, painfully careful, not to interfere. She hadn't criticized Yun's cooking or questioned her career. She hadn't commented on their finances or their marriage. Had she failed without realizing it? The thought unsettled her. Mei Lin had always believed self-awareness could protect a person, that if you were careful, considerate, and kind, you could avoid becoming someone else's enemy. Yun's words shattered that belief. Later that afternoon, Mei Lin heard Yun on another call. This time, she didn't mean to listen. She was in the hallway, carrying clean towels, when Yun's voice drifted out again. Soft, fast, confident. Mei Lin hesitated. She told herself she shouldn't eavesdrop. That listening further would only deepen her anxiety. But the damage had already been done. Turning away now wouldn't erase what she'd heard. She stayed where she was. "I can't rush it," Yun said. "If I move too soon, Wei will notice." Mei Lin's heart thudded painfully. "So I'll wait. Make it look natural." She's old-fashioned, she won't see it coming. Old-fashioned. Mei Lin's fingers tightened around the towels. "I just need one mistake from her," Yun continued. "One moment where she looks unreasonable. After that, I won't even have to say anything." There it was. Not violence. Not confrontation. Reputation. Mei Lin understood then what Yun meant by revenge. Yun wasn't planning to harm her physically. She was planning to isolate her. To turn Wei against her slowly, subtly, until Mei Lin became a problem that needed solving. The realization left Mei Lin cold. She returned to her room, closed the door, and sat down heavily on the bed. Her reflection stared back at her from the mirror, gray hair neatly tied back, face lined but calm. She looked like exactly what Yun had described. Harmless, traditional, easy to underestimate. For the first time, Mei Lin considered the possibility that Yun had been watching her far longer than she realized. Over the next few days, Mei Lin became an observer in her own life. She paid attention to the small things she had previously ignored. The way Yun phrased her words when Wei was present. How she framed concerns as worries rather than complaints. "Your mother seems tired lately," Yun would say gently. "I worry she's not adjusting well." Or, "I think living with us might be stressful for her." "She doesn't say anything, but I can tell." Wei listened. He nodded. He trusted his wife. Mei Lin noticed how Yun asked questions that sounded caring but planted doubt. "Did she tell you she moved your documents? I found them in a different folder." "She said she forgot to turn off the stove yesterday. Maybe she's just overwhelmed." None of it was false. None of it was overtly cruel. But together, it painted a picture Mei Lin did not recognize, and feared others would accept. One evening, Mei Lin accidentally knocked over a glass of water at the dinner table. The spill was minor, quickly cleaned up. Yun reacted instantly. "It's okay," she said, reaching for a towel. "These things happen." She smiled at Wei. "She's been a little shaky lately, haven't you noticed?" Mei Lin felt the room tilt slightly. "I'm fine," she said too quickly. Wei looked between them. "Mom." "I'm fine," Mei Lin repeated, forcing a smile. Yun's eyes lingered on her for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. Something unreadable passed through them. That night, Mei Lin cried quietly into her pillow, not from fear, but from grief. Grief for the trust she had assumed existed. Grief for the version of her life where family meant safety. She considered confronting Yun then and there, telling her what she'd heard, exposing the truth. But instinct stopped her. Yun had been careful, calculated. A confrontation without proof would only make things worse. Yun could deny everything, and Mei Lin would look exactly like the unstable woman Yun had been subtly describing. Instead, Mei Lin did something she had never done before. She prepared. She returned to her Chinese studies with renewed intensity. Not just the language, but the culture. The idioms. The indirect ways meaning could be conveyed and concealed. Yun relied on nuance. Mei Lin would learn to hear it all. She also began writing things down. Dates. Conversations. Exact phrasing. She kept the notebook hidden, its pages filling with neat, precise handwriting. This wasn't revenge. It was clarity. A way to ground herself in reality when doubt crept in. One afternoon, while Yun was out, Mei Lin helped tidy the home office. She wasn't snooping, she was cleaning, something she'd always done instinctively. On the desk, Yun's tablet lit up with a notification. Mei Lin tried to look away. Truly, she did. But the screen displayed a message preview, in Chinese. She understood enough now to grasp the meaning immediately. "Is she still there?" the message read. Mei Lin's breath caught. The sender's name was unfamiliar. Another message followed seconds later. "Be patient. Don't rush. Remember what we talked about." Mei Lin stepped back, her pulse roaring in her ears. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't a misinterpretation. Yun wasn't alone. That evening, Mei Lin sat across from Yun at dinner, watching her laugh at something Wei said. The sound felt hollow now, rehearsed. Mei Lin realized that the woman sitting across from her was not simply insecure or resentful. She was deliberate. And Mei Lin was no longer just a passive figure in someone else's story. For the first time since overhearing that first conversation, Mei Lin felt something besides fear rising in her chest. Resolve. She didn't know yet how this would end. She didn't know what she would say or when she would say it. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would not be erased quietly. Mei Lin began to understand the rhythm of Yun's plan the way one understands an approaching storm, not through a single dramatic sign, but through a gradual shift in the air. Nothing overt happened all at once. There were no arguments, no raised voices, no accusations that could be pointed to and named. Instead, Yun's actions arrived disguised as concern, wrapped in the language of care. And that, Mei Lin realized, was what made them dangerous. Wei trusted his wife completely. He had married Yun after a whirlwind romance that bloomed during a demanding period in his career. She had been steady when everything else felt unstable, organized, intelligent, confident in ways Mei Lin herself had never been. Mei Lin had admired that once. She had believed her son was lucky. Now she watched as that same confidence was turned into quiet authority. It started with small adjustments. Yun suggested reorganizing the kitchen to make things easier for Mom. Items Mei Lin used daily were moved to higher shelves, justified with casual explanations. Mei Lin adapted without complaint, standing on a stool rather than drawing attention to the inconvenience. Yun suggested switching grocery brands, citing health benefits. When Mei Lin asked questions, Yun smiled and said, "I know it's confusing. Don't worry, I'll handle it." The word handle stung. Then came the appointments. "Maybe it wouldn't hurt to get a checkup," Yun said one evening. "Just to be safe." Mei Lin hesitated. "I already see my doctor regularly." "Of course," Yun replied quickly. "I just worry. Stress can affect memory." Wei looked concerned. "Mom, maybe she's right." Mei Lin nodded. Arguing would only reinforce the image Yun was crafting. At the clinic, Mei Lin answered every question carefully. She spoke clearly, deliberately. The doctor found nothing alarming. Normal age-related changes, nothing more. Yun seemed disappointed. That night, Mei Lin wrote everything down. She no longer questioned whether Yun intended harm. The question now was timing and proof. Yun, meanwhile, grew bolder. She began speaking Chinese more freely in Mei Lin's presence, her tone casual, her words laced with implications Yun assumed went unnoticed. "She's stubborn," Yun said once on the phone, standing only a few feet away. "But that's how they are. They think endurance is strength." Mei Lin pretended not to hear, but every syllable landed with clarity. Another time, Yun laughed softly and said, "If you wait long enough, people will show who they really are." Mei Lin understood the subtext perfectly. The trap, she realized, required patience. Yun needed Mei Lin to react, to say the wrong thing, to appear unreasonable, to confirm the story Yun had already begun telling. So Mei Lin became careful in a way she had never been before. She spoke less, listened more. When corrected, she thanked Yun. When frustrated, she excused herself quietly. Outwardly, she looked like she was fading. Inwardly, she was documenting everything. One afternoon, Yun invited a friend over, a woman Mei Lin had never met. They sat in the living room drinking tea, speaking in Chinese. Mei Lin stayed in the kitchen, pretending to tidy. "She's still here," Yun said lightly. The friend replied, "That must be hard." Yun sighed. "You have no idea." They spoke freely, assuming invisibility. "She watches everything," Yun continued. "Acts sweet. But I know what she's doing." The friend lowered her voice. "And Wei. He'll see eventually," Yun said. "He always does. I just need to be patient." Mei Lin's hands shook as she wiped an already clean counter. Later that evening, Mei Lin overheard Yun say something that finally revealed the endgame. "If she leaves on her own," Yun said, "no one gets hurt." Leaves. Not moves. Not visit less. Leaves permanently. Mei Lin understood then that Yun wasn't simply trying to assert control over her home. She was trying to remove Mei Lin from her son's life entirely. The realization didn't make Mei Lin angry at first. It made her unbearably sad. She had raised Wei with patience and sacrifice, and had put aside her own ambitions to give him stability. She had believed, naively perhaps, that motherhood earned a certain lifelong place. Now she saw how easily that place could be undermined. That night, Mei Lin made a decision. She would stop waiting. But she would not confront Yun blindly. Instead, She would let Yun reveal herself. Over the next week, Mei Lin began doing something subtle but risky. She responded. When Yun implied something about her memory, Mei Lin calmly corrected her, with specifics. When Yun spoke Chinese near her, Mei Lin made eye contact at key moments, letting her understanding show just enough to unsettle. Yun noticed. Mei Lin saw it in the way Yun paused mid-sentence. In the way her eyes flicked toward Mei Lin when certain words were spoken. One evening, Yun slipped. She wouldn't understand, Yun said in Chinese, speaking to Wei about a financial matter. Mei Lin looked up. I do, she said softly, in Chinese. The room went silent. Wei stared at his mother. Mom. Yun froze, color draining from her face. Mei Lin met Yun's gaze steadily. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't explain. I've been learning, she said simply, switching back to English. Yun recovered quickly, forcing a laugh. Oh, I didn't know. Mei Lin smiled politely. You didn't ask. That night, Yun didn't sleep. Mei Lin could hear her pacing long after midnight. The next morning, Yun was careful again, overly careful. Her words were neutral, her tone guarded. The balance had shifted. Yun knew now that Mei Lin was not as unaware as she believed. And that knowledge, Mei Lin understood, would force Yun to choose. Either retreat, or accelerate. Mei Lin returned to her room and closed the door gently behind her. She knew what was coming next. And this time, she would be ready. Mei Lin felt the shift immediately. It wasn't something Yun said or did outright. It was the absence of small hostilities, the careful neutrality, the exaggerated calm. Yun no longer corrected her. No longer hinted. No longer spoke freely on the phone within earshot. That was how Mei Lin knew the plan had entered its next phase. People like Yun did not abandon control once it was threatened. They adjusted their strategy. The house grew quieter in a way that felt intentional. Yun spent more time out, returning later than usual. When she was home, she stayed behind closed doors, her conversations muted, her laptop angled away. Wei noticed none of it. He was tired. Work had been demanding, and Yun had been especially attentive lately. More affectionate, more agreeable. She cooked his favorite meals, asked about his day, listened with the appearance of devotion. To him, things seemed better than they had in weeks. To Mei Lin, it felt like standing in the calm center of a tightening net. The first real move came on a Sunday afternoon. Wei was in the shower when Yun approached Mei Lin in the living room. She carried herself gently, voice soft, eyes lowered just enough to suggest vulnerability. Can we talk? Yun asked. Mei Lin nodded. They sat across from each other. Yun folded her hands neatly in her lap. I've been thinking a lot, Yun said, about what's best for everyone. Mei Lin said nothing. I worry that this arrangement might be overwhelming for you, Yun continued. You've been through so much. Mei Lin recognized the phrasing immediately. Concern disguised as suggestion. I'm managing, Mei Lin replied calmly. Yun sighed. I know you say that. But Wei worries. And honestly, I do too. There it was. Wei, invoked without his presence. Mei Lin looked directly at her. Has Wei said something to you? Yun hesitated, a fraction too long. He just wants you to be comfortable. Mei Lin nodded slowly. So do I. Silence stretched between them. Yun tried again, this time carefully. Maybe living independently again would give you more peace. Space. Dignity. Dignity. Mei Lin felt something steady settle inside her. I'm not ready to leave, she said. Yun's jaw tightened, though her smile remained. Of course. I just thought we should talk openly. Mei Lin leaned forward slightly. Then let's be open. Yun stiffened. You've spoken about me, Mei Lin continued, her tone even. In ways you didn't expect me to understand. Yun's eyes widened before she could stop herself. Mei Lin switched to Chinese, not sharply, not dramatically, but with fluency that left no room for denial. You assumed silence meant ignorance, Mei Lin said. It didn't. The color drained from Yun's face. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she laughed weakly. You misunderstood. No, Mei Lin replied. I didn't. Yun's composure cracked. You were listening to private conversations. You were planning my removal, Mei Lin said. We are past pretending. Yun stood abruptly. You're twisting things. Mei Lin stood too. Slowly, carefully. You wanted me to make a mistake. To look unstable. To leave quietly. Yun's voice shook now, anger breaking through. You don't belong here. The words hung between them, bare and undeniable. That was when Wei entered the room. What's going on? He asked. Neither woman spoke immediately. Mei Lin turned to her son. Wei, I need you to listen. Without interrupting. Yun opened her mouth. Mei Lin raised her hand. I've been learning Chinese for months, Mei Lin said. I heard what was said about me. I wrote it down. I didn't imagine it. Wei looked confused. Then uncertain. Yun stepped forward quickly. She's confused. She misunderstood casual conversations. Mei Lin handed Wei the notebook. Dates. Phrases. Context. Wei flipped through it slowly. His expression changed, not to anger, but to disbelief. Yun's voice rose. You're taking her side? I'm taking the truth seriously, Wei said quietly. Silence fell heavy. Yun's shoulders sagged. When she spoke again, the mask was gone. I was scared, she said. I felt watched. Judged. Like I was losing my place. Mei Lin felt no satisfaction, only exhaustion. You tried to erase me, Mei Lin said. Fear doesn't excuse that. Wei sat down heavily. That night, nothing was resolved. But everything had been exposed. And sometimes, exposure was the end of the illusion. Mei Lin returned to her room, closed the door, and for the first time in weeks, slept without fear.